We're going to pick up where we left off. We are in the core woods with N1, working on a tree here. And this is the one that I decided to go with on that after further review later. Now, I milled around the core woods for a little bit. Caught them working on another low wedge. I think we're going to find this year that is going to be a consistent theme. If you haven't figured that out already, I'm really motivated by uh, the low wedges this year, and that they have uh, wedges were high for a while. And last year, out of necessity, they learned how to institutionalize an appreciation for lower wedges, and now they're doing them out of habit, and that's a really great thing to see. You get more tree for your buck, and that's starting to evidence itself out at Stack Site. Now, um, I did spend this past weekend at Stack Site, where they're doing great work, kind of getting ahead of the game. They're still doing the split double cuts, where you've got half of the crews come out on Saturday, the other half of the crews come out on Sunday. What they just instituted this past weekend, which again we're not at in photos yet, but this past weekend they did start sending. If you work out in the woods on Saturday, on Sunday you go out to Stack Site and you start getting Stack Site ready, and vice versa. So uh, I was able to go out there and look at how Stack Site is coming together and what the skids are looking like, and the proportion of trees, the ratio of trees that are long and tall, first and second and third tier trees, is really impressive. They've got a lot of really tall, really straight trees um, that have lined themselves up on this skid. So um, a part of that, and this is what I'm going to stand by, is that they're lowering their wedges and getting an extra foot or two out of every one of their trees, which is good to see. Now, as I said, I usually try and uh, I've said before, I usually try to just keep to myself and not uh, interfere with their process. But I did enjoy with this young man. Um, he to my mind looked a little bit like one of the senior red pots, and uh, I can say this because um, I too am Polish. Uh, I felt that this young man looked like a Polish version of one of the red pots, and I told him that, and we all had a good laugh while he was trying to focus on his work. And anyway, then pretty soon, by the time it was over, everybody was bagging on him for it, and we had a good bit of fun. But he did the work here, and I got what I thought was a pretty neat little angle in that his natural um, and here it is. Here's where I said what I said. Right here, 1:55 seconds a.m. is when I told him that he looked like a Polish version of one of our senior red pots. And there you see the laugh. I don't often wind up catching people laughing. I actually don't generally see that. I see people, the kind of photos I see, generally I'm more attuned to the motivation and the intensity, and sometimes the physicality, and yes, sometimes the pain. It's hard, it hurts. That's what I see, and I guess sometimes when I pick on a fella, I might get a laugh out of it. So I'm actually going to tag that one just because I don't get to see that very often. But my idea here with this was this tree you see had an angle to it, and his natural approach to the tree, in his natural stance, he kind of mimicked, had the same angle as the tree. And I thought that was interesting from this angle, and so that's what we got there. This is a little underexposed, of course, but we're going to see that I get it back as he's swinging. Always shooting in manual, not because I think it's better or not because I think that that's what you have to do. Mostly because I'm a bit of a sadist and or masochist, whichever the one likes to make themselves miserable. That's uh, that's my bag, and so this is harder, not necessarily better. Sometimes you see that there are things that exposures, there are shots that I miss. Um, that I wouldn't have missed if I wasn't in manual mode, but that's just me. Um, like I say, not like I recommend it for everybody or anybody, but that's just how I do it. And we see that I was able to get my adjustments back pretty quickly so I could start capturing these shots. Now, this is another example of we've seen a few of the this axe from this angle going in. I thought there could be something there. The table was so wide open. We see how tall this table is, this wedge is. This is the table, the flat part. And then coming from here up, that's the face of your wedge. And they had opened this up and made this wedge so tall that I felt like I might have had a good shot, a nice open field of view on getting an axe going in from above. And I gave it the old college try, but I'm not sure that I got it. And this does not interest me at all. This is a disappointing shot. The axe is still moving, but not so much. This is on. Uh, uh, if you see here, he's got a chip on his handle, so he has already struck the tree. There has already been contact made, and this is the axe moving back away from the tree for him to come in with another swing. So when it comes off the tree, it's moving slower, and when you freeze it in the photo, it just looks like he's resting his axe there. So the closest thing I've got to anything out of this whole set is nothing. You win some, you lose some. That is in total for just that shot 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, almost 60 photos. And none of them worked. Oh well. You're going to see in the photos that I took from this past weekend, there's one photo in particular that I spent probably an hour on. It took probably a couple hundred frames, and I don't know if I got what I was looking for. So it just happens. So here we are, still moving on to another shot, another low wedge, and again with the angles. This almost has a bit of with the angle of the tree and the angle of the swinger, this almost has a bit of a Dutch angle vibe, like that a weird artsy, was weird, 1950s spy private eye movies or something like that. Just that weird Dutch angles coming in. Yeah, interesting, different. But you can't help it if that's what's happening. Then embrace it. You got an angled tree and a low wedge and an aggressive approach to it. So use it. I think I'm probably going to go. And again, this was we talked about this before. I would rather, well, I'd rather cut them off here than be missing the tip of a toe. You know, you try to make sure we get everything in there, or we cut it off at a reasonable point. I didn't, but this is still fine. We'll take that. I don't think that's too big of a distraction. Here we are with the Squadron 16 butt pot, starting a back wedge. And if I recall correctly, it has been a couple weeks, but if I recall correctly, let's see, he's taken one, this is one, two, I believe this is three, four, still four, five swings, and we see it break off. So he was starting a back wedge so that his crew could jump in on it, and he killed the tree himself on the back wedge. The front and back wedges are both always started by a chief, yellow pot, butt pot. And so when you've done the front wedge, which is the wedge that faces where the tree is going to fall, you move to the back wedge. Your crew leadership is going to start that back wedge, and generally they try to give it just a fair start before they turn the axe over to the crew to supervise their work in cutting down the tree. And in this case, he took 6 swings, which is a fair amount of swings. It's not a whole lot. That should be a good start. You see, he barely even started it at all. But that tree just wanted to go so bad that the tree fell, and his crew didn't get a whack at it. So it happens. I will say, though, that it happened again the next week to him. So the takeaway from that actually is that he seems to prefer deeper front wedges. So this is one of those things that I'm going to note to self. The next time I'm in the woods and I see him working on a front wedge, if that front wedge is not very big, I'm probably going to keep going and then come back later because I know that he's going to make a big front wedge. If he is getting ready to start a back wedge, I am not going to go anywhere. So I can see that tree fall because I know that from a couple weeks experience that this butt pot is probably going to fall the tree pretty quickly once he gets to the back wedge. It's anecdotal. It's a limited set of information, but I'm going to be pretty confident in that moving forward. So one of the things that happens in reviewing the photos is that, you know, sometimes I'm able to get a photo that I want to use, but then sometimes what I'm figuring out is notes on how the woods conduct themselves so that I can, the next time I go out, I can get positioned for preemptively positioned for what's going to happen. So the photos, in other words, become as much notes for me as they become actual photos themselves to share with everyone. So here we have Raza's axe again. This tree, when it fell, one of the advantages to a good, solid front wedge, a big front wedge, is that when that tree goes again, it's just going to go. And it's going to go fast, which makes it more likely to be able to fall itself through the canopy in the event that the tree might be somewhere where it's going to want to hang up. And this tree was definitely in a position that it wanted to hang up. A good big front wedge ideally helps to keep that from happening, but as we see from Roz's axe having to do some work here. He was in the area, the tree got hung up, um, way, 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 way up top. Way up top. This was a very, very tall tree. And so Raza came in here to uh, to break it free from the stump and get it to fall. And I did not get the shot I was looking for on this. It was a very bendy tree. It broke when it came down. It it kicked up here. It didn't behave in a typical fashion, and I missed the shot of the tree breaking free of the stump. This is that butt pot down swinging on his tree, turning it into a log. This is towards the front of the woods when you walk in through the front gate. Well, the second front gate. There are two front gates. So this is the second front gate into the woods. This is the piss pot for Squadron 16. So if you're watching, you probably know this. But for anybody that doesn't, in at Texas A&M, in the Corps especially, but also in tradition-loving Aggies, you have every class has kind of its nickname. And there's fish, which is common, freshman. Um, you've got piss heads, or sophomores. Um, you've got butts for surge butts, which are the juniors. That goes back to when you get to wear the surge pants, the Corps of Cadets military surge pants. You get to wear those when you're juniors, historically, and so you're the surge butt. And then the last is the zips for zippers. Well, referencing the braid on the cover, the hat that the seniors wear with their uniform, and that braid, a gold and black braid, looks like a zipper. So zips. In any event, the piss pot is the younger crew leadership in the Corps. Outfits have a piss pot generally, and then they have a butt pot. So they have a sophomore in charge, and they have a junior in charge. This is back in Legner, who has a thing for overalls. So I tried to get in position there. There was something actually happened over here to the right, and I was trying to get to that so that I could get the A&M on the back of the pants with the action that was going off here to the right. I did not get over fast enough. So by the time I got to where I could get both of those in the shot, what was happening over here on the right was over. So I didn't actually get the shot I was looking for here. We're not going to use either of those three. Now here's a chief swinging on his tree. And for this one, and it's generally rule of thumb kind of practice. You want to split your shot into thirds. Common practice. You don't generally put something right smack dab in the middle, but this was me flirting with putting the tree right in the middle. But I still managed to have the chief who's swinging on it over on that right third. Now, what I'm looking for in this is, we've seen people swinging. We've shown that. I'm looking to get an angle of a swing happening, but also some clarity on the A&M in the back. Some of the photos, it's obvious that it's Texas A&M that this is happening. Some of them just looks like people out working in the woods. So every now and again, I do try to get one that makes it clear that uh, these are Aggies who are building Bonfire. And I think that this is as close as I get to that, and I'm actually uh, I'm happy with it. Could be happier, but I'm gonna take that. I have in sharing these photos, keeping in mind that I don't make anybody look at these photos. I don't force anybody to sit and look at the photos. Understanding that fact, on a very rare occasion, I will have somebody tell me that I shared a cuss word. They will say, "Did you know that you are publishing cuss words?" And that's not nice. I get that every now and again. Um, and I say that to say this. There's a cuss word. Not like I care. Um, if there's a good shot, then that's what we're using. And I like this shot. So I apologize to anybody in advance. But I will be sharing a cuss word. It's right there. You don't have to look at it if you don't want. But all the everybody out there paints their pot however they see fit, unless of course you're a crew chief or you're an upper leadership, and then you paint your pot the way that it's always painted. You decorate it, letter it, however, the way that it's always painted. And so sometimes you wear a pot that is the way it is, and this is one of the Lechner pots, and I like the way that shot worked out. And then there's another thing. What I'm trying to do is shoot what is happening out there. I don't. I try very hard not to um, uh, project or change um, uh, the story as it's happening. I mean, granted, there's nothing I can do but shoot through my filter. It, it's going to be different if I take photos than it's going to be if somebody else takes photos. So that is expected. But I do make every effort to not go out and try and manipulate or or change what is happening, um, or the perception of what's happening through the photography. So if somebody's out there doing something, and if it's different, if it's interesting, if it's not the way I would have done it, or if it's not a photo that I'd necessarily, if it's got a bad word or something in there, and I wouldn't necessarily want my youngest looking at it, well, that I'm still going to take the photo anyway because it's happening. So, uh, and since he was saying FTU, I'm especially fine with that. I do like this one as well. I like the axe kind of coming out of the darkness, and then with him there in those shadows. So there's actually a few here from that set uh, that I am going to use. And again, this was just one of those fortunate scenarios. You're walking through the woods and you find a wedge that just has the light on it, and it's good light, and there's a lot of it, and so I'm pretty confident there's going to be another one in all these from being here. This is pretty close, though I would prefer that the axe and the blade is more in the light. Right now, this is just a little too confusing for my taste. Um, I remember there were a couple times with him swinging on this that I would take a few shots. I would think, okay, I think I'm getting close. Um, I I I think I'm almost there. And while I'm looking at my camera, getting ready to take another shot or something, he would take another whack, and there would go a gigantic chunk of wood out of that wedge, and I was not taking a photo of it at the time. That happened multiple times on this spot. Um, and then you just kick yourself and tell yourself what an idiot you are. This is actually very, very close, but this piece here is a bit of a distraction. If this were closer to uh, to the lens, if this were nearer to you, this one chip right here, I think that would be interesting. I think that that would connect you more closely to this. But at this here, just where it is, it's a distraction. It's uh, not close enough and not far away enough. So I'm still going to keep looking and see if I can find another. This would have been the kind of thing that I was shooting for earlier, remember, with that big wide open wedge. This wedge is a little bit shorter, but there's better light. And so maybe I might have something here by way of an axe laying in, uh, ideally in the light. This is an example of another one. I missed this chunk. I just missed it. I caught too soon, a fraction too soon, fraction too late. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this group, and I'm going to come back to that later. But this was a great setup, and I'm going to be really disappointed in myself if with this great setup, with this great light on this great spot, I don't find one that is a well executed photo from here. Now we're back, and this might actually be. I know I picked one earlier, but I am for sure this is going to be a better version, the best version. That angle, the light, the intensity of the light, the uh, collection of tools being visible, the wedge going on in the background. This is going to be the A&M cutting on a tree for Bonfire shot. I'm not going to use the one I picked earlier. This is going to do that job. I actually like this look. Now, I like it because to me, what I see is somebody getting ready to swing because I was there and I have that memory. However, if I take myself out of that memory of being there and I look at this photo honestly, I have to admit that it could very well be somebody walking through the woods carrying an axe. The wrong way, mind you. But if I didn't know what I was looking at, I might suspect that this is somebody just walking around carrying an axe. So, um, I don't think I'm going to use this one. When I see it and I like it, I know that I'm projecting the memory of having been there on that photo. Now, when people first started using Fiskars, here's a Fisker. Black handle, weird looking axe head. When people first started using Fiskars, um, I actually had a rule, a general rule of thumb maybe, or principle that I stood on, that uh, if you're swinging with a regular axe and you start swinging with the Fiskars, I might take a couple photos, but I'm going to go find somebody swinging with a big, heavy, regular axe. because again, that resonated with me and what I saw in the work, doing it the hard way. Um, but Fiskars has now become um, Fiskars has now become a kind of an accepted practice, and you'll find even big bruisers, uh, big strong Paul Bunyan folks swinging with Fiskars because sometimes it's the right tool for the job. So they've converted me. I will admit and concede that there is place for Fiskars axes in the woods. That said, it just so happens that the ones that look the best to me here of this set are the ones where he's got the big heavy axe. And I do like this one. The axe making contact, the chips flying back. I like the contrast, the light and the dark. So this is going to replace that one from earlier. The other A&M on the back of the overalls. This is going to be the one we pick for that. What was I doing here? I don't even know what I was doing here. I have no idea what I was doing here. I'm going to be honest with you. So we're back on that same tree. And here's one of the dead brown pots cutting through the rest of that. Here we are back at a pelt. I've again look at the correction and exposure. Bad job, better job. So this is sort of the rehydrate, get your food, um, stay in the shade for a sec if that's what you need, sort of area. Um, I like the sign. I think they started bringing this sign out last year. I think it was last year. Um, I think it. I mean, there's something to that, right? There's the photos of people who are relaxing and enjoying their a breath and a little bit of shade because there's less and less shade every week if you're doing your job right. Um, there is something to capturing people, getting that breath and rehydrating, getting ready to work again. There is also something to taking. I enjoy seeing this sign in the woods, um, but the two of them on top of each other. I thought that might work. It doesn't work. It it doesn't work. This will work the next time I go back there and make sure that I hang around here until tree work is going on in the background. So again, another one of those note to selves on the deal. And here we are. This old guy. This was uh, I felt a rare scene historically, and as Ace has aged, it has this does happen a little bit more often, though not very often. Ace stopping to let somebody pet him, especially Ace stopping to let somebody pet him who isn't offering him food. That is what makes this extraordinary. On further review, is that she does not have food or water, and Ace is stopping for a pet. So um, Ace is fun. Ace was a mutt Well, we thought he was a mutt. He's probably a mutt. I don't know. Was dumped on Northgate, and some Northgate regulars rescued him, and they brought him to my house. I lived on Northgate, and some folks knew that that's where I lived, and so they brought me Ace, who was at the time we took him to the pound or the vet, and the vet assumed that he was 4 weeks old, and this was 11 years ago, 12, 12 years ago, I believe. Their guess was he was 4 weeks old, a teeny teeny little puppy, and uh, we took him in. Uh, the plan was it was a weekend, and so we were going to take him to the pound at the start of the next week because I wasn't ready for a dog, is what I thought. But that night, when we had him in the house, I figured I'd let him run around and be a nice guy about it. But he went to the bathroom on the floor, and I figured I'd help the next guy out who was going to take him, and whoever that was going to be, and I told him not to pee on the floor, and I stuck him outside. And the next morning, I locked him in the room, and I went to bed at night so that I could. Uh, when I woke up in the morning, though I would know that he went somewhere on the floor, at least I'd know what room it was in. And when I woke up and opened the door, he goes tearing out of there, and I thought he was going to go run downstairs and go on the floor. And so I'm running after him, and I get down there, and I don't see him anywhere, and I go around the corner, and he's waiting at the back door. 4 weeks old, and he'd figured out how not to go on the floor. So at that point, I decided to keep him. I believe it was the next year. I think it was the next year. Maybe it was that year. Either way, very young. Brought him out to Bonfire, and he just took to it and loved it. And he knows the woods. He runs the woods. Um, he has a hell of a time out there. I've on many occasions had Aggies come up and say, uh, if I ever get a little tired, Ace shows up and he reminds me that if Ace can do it, I can do it. So I always like seeing him in the woods, and I always love how much he seems to love it out there. As people say, is he your dog? He's not. I mean, I might keep him for a few months out of the year, but he's not my dog. He's Bonfire's dog, and I just take care of him. In any event, here's a rare thing this year. It's not happening a lot because of the deliberate reliance on tractors, and that is the swamping of the logs, the picking up and the carrying of the logs. They're relying on tractors this year because they do want to the best degree possible minimize um, the very close contact um, under this uh, this COVID situation. So a lot of the very close contact is cut out, but sometimes you do just have to get a log out. And so this is one of those occasions that I was happy to get it. Now, what you see here, and what I'm trying to catch here, is you've got your caller who's calling the logs out of the woods. She is the one that is giving the instructions to the entire log to follow. And back in the back here, you see this axe handle upright. That's one of the chiefs who is behind, and he's holding his axe handle up for the purposes of letting her know where exactly the back of that log is. So it's just a way for her to be able to give instructions to front end left, back end right, um, uh, allow her to see that without having to run back to the back and uh, see which way the tail end of her log is moving. Because with a log like this, you see that severe crook. You can lose track of where the back of that is without some guidance. So I'm going to flag one of these, And I'm going to flag one of these and come back and make sure that I've flagged the right one, but we're going to go ahead and move on. This was another one that not necessarily, I didn't look at this and go, hey, this is an interesting photo artistically or what have you, but I am, when I can, trying to remember to, when we catch this blue tractor doing work, I am trying to remember to grab some photos of it, just so that we can, I'm going to put together a collection of those to share with the donor who provided this tractor for Bonfire to use. And I would like to have a wide array of photos for him, because I personally, and I know Bonfire does as well, really appreciate that contribution, which has been very useful to Bonfire this year. So that is the end of the 13th. That is the last of cut 3. Now, before you go anywhere, I am actually going to continue on with cut 4, because I do have over 2,000 photos left before I'm caught up. So I'm going to continue. But first, I would like to, out of my own curiosity, how many photos did we get from the second and third week of cut? Wow, right at 30 a day. 60 photos for cut from the 12th and 13th. 60 photos out of about 1,500 that were taken. So that's a little bit, that's a lot of photos to come up with a few shots to be shared. But as we've seen, the mask thing is giving me fits this year, and so I'm not surprised at that ratio. The number of photos that I'm dialed in on, and I know I'm going to get a great shot, and then I find out later that I actually wasn't focused because I couldn't see anything. And see, speak of the devil. So, anyway, we're going to proceed on. We are now September 19th of 2020. And we are looking at, this would be the 4th weekend of cut. And I'm trying to get here the junior red pots walking back from into the woods back out to the parking lot. And I'm overexposed. And I finally get my exposure together just in time for it to not be an interesting shot anymore. Here is Schumacher. Schumacher is also known as HHH. And it's called HHH because there are 3 H's in Schumacher. SCHUHMACHER. Just proof that I do in fact know how to spell it. I always end up misspelling it at some point, and then somebody from Schumacher has to remind me about it. So this is evidence. I know how to spell Schumacher sometimes. But this is a scene that happens. The getting out to cut. You woke up early. You just dragged yourself out of bed. You just made it here, and it's in the parking lot that you'll see the braiding scene happening. People getting their hair tidied up for a day's worth of work. Here's somebody getting taped in advance. So this was this is for protecting the hands with work, right? This is nobody's wounded here. This is just to protect the palms of the hands. The axes will tear you up real good. And so one of the ways of dealing with that is with tape. I use tape. I always used a lot of tape. Um, I think I almost made a shtick out of it. How much tape that I used. Um, I'd use tape and just tear my shirt to shreds and uh, tape up my hands. Um, Not everybody. It's not a habit that everybody has, but I was hoping to get one that kind of showed, this kind of getting ready to march in there and get after it and just go to battle kind of thing. And unfortunately, it didn't come through. A nice elbow shot here, but I didn't. That just didn't work out. So, oh well, no problem. That's going to happen again. And then once you find the people who like to get themselves taped up, then you remember to look out for them later. Now here's a couple other folks getting taped up. This sort of the good bull thing, um, horsing around in the parking lot there. So it would have been cool if we could juxtapose one form of taping up with another, but that's all right. I think this one will work. I know that I'm going to see somebody else taping their hand later. I'm probably not going to see somebody taped up like a mummy later. So um, here we are in Kruger Woods. Oh, this was FHK, by the way. Eventually was left with me a few years ago. Before it was left with me, Hart got their hands on it and they carved a heart into it. So uh, a true uh, campus bench. Everybody's left their mark on it. I like having it. And here what I was looking for was this beautiful sunrise. The sunrises all year have been beautiful, and the parking site is fortunate. The whole layout is fortunate to have the sun coming up in the background filtered through the trees, so things aren't washed out very early in the morning. From a taking photos perspective, they're not washed out, and so I enjoy that. And it's also nice, especially at the beginning of the year when it still is very hot, even from the very beginning of the morning. It's nice to not have that sun hitting you from before you even start work. But this is me just trying to catch that sun, that beautiful orangish pinkish sun peeking through those trees with a chief kind of staring down the rest of his day. This is Leggett in the parking lot. Leggett being, again, my daughter is an honorary member of Leggett. Her sister just joined her for the first time ever this year um, with Leggett. Not all the time, just occasionally. They keep distractions to a minimum, but I do like to share this experience with my girls, and so they do get to come out there every now and again. Here's we're back to that same group, and somebody else getting their hair did. Um, Again, this is one of those. I was there, so I know he's getting his hair did, and maybe you can tell. But if I remove myself from having been there, this might just be confusing. Why did you take a picture of a guy kneeling there while somebody's doing something with their hands? So, I don't know. I'm going to come back and look at that, but I'm not sure that it comes through what's happening. Now, I believe this young man was not joking when he said that he did regularly or taught yoga or something. Either way, this is Kruger again having that doing that thing they do when they stretch in the morning, which again has become sort of a thing that people do now. They play around and stretch and calisthenics and everything. Um, they're fish. I can tell this because of these stripes. Still wearing their stripes in week 4. Uh, as a former participant, not the photographer speaking, but as a former participant, I do like to see that they are back to wearing the stripes for the entire year. That comes and goes. I don't remember if we wore the stripes for the entire year. I don't remember if that's the way we did it back then. But uh, regardless, I think that that's the best way to do it. Own being a freshman all year long. You should be proud to be a freshman. And, as I've said before, everybody should be reminded all the time that you are a freshman because it is the freshman that this experience is for. So, saying, oh, look at this freshman, and more about saying, hey, this is a freshman. Make sure that they're having a good time. Make sure they're having the opportunity to work. So glad to see they're owning those. This was trying to, in a hurry, get that sun. Again, um, overshot that first one. Trying to get that sun and the cars in the parking lot. And people, each of these groups doing their different routines. And I just don't know that I got it with any one of these. I don't. So I'm going to hit the mute button for a second. And we're back. As I've said, credit to Thomas Campbell for the great recommendation on the equipment here, the D750, which I can, if I want to be able to get that sun and I want to be able to see it clearly and not have it be overexposed, the D750 still gets a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the darks. Right, so you can bring these darks back up a long way without distorting them, in order that you can expose correctly when you've got a bright and isolated light source like a sun or a moon. You can expose that correctly without overexposure, which is what we had here. You see it's washed out. You can't even see that there's a sun. It's very overexposed. This is closer to the right exposure, but to have gotten this exposure right, this is wrong. And I cannot bring that back. Turn it down all I want. The best I'm going to get, see, that's gone. The sun is gone from that photo, and there's no getting it back. However, with the D750, I can underexpose on purpose so that I get the sun. And then I can bring the shadows up, and I can get closer to getting that shot. Now again, we might just have to accept that this is not going to be ideal, and that's all right. I'm going to come back to this one later, and I'm going to see if there's another one in this set that is better. And if not, this is such, I enjoy so much the sun coming over this setup that if I don't find one that works out of this group, I'm going to take some notes and I'm going to go try it again the next week. So here the junior red pot is called, made the yellow pots, butt pots call. And this is only going to be yellow pots today. I believe the core is on the next day. But here they come running. The yellow pot for Kruger was not available on this day. So you've got one of the Kruger crew chiefs. Here comes FHK, I believe. I actually got some really cool shots of the yellow pots running at cut this past weekend. Now this past weekend was a family birthday, so as with most birthdays, it happens every year, and so every year about this time I end up missing a day. So I did miss one day this past weekend, but on the day that I went out to Stack Site to catch what they're doing there, which again has never really been done before, this early season Stack Site prep with a bunch of crews out there. So I went to go catch that, and I got some pretty cool ones of the yellow pots run into that call. At a certain point in the year, you've seen it a few times, you've taken that shot a few times, you've told that story a few times. You continue to go out there and see if something new and different in the yellow pot butt pot situation. That call by the Jerps to have the morning meeting with the crew leadership. So I do go out there to catch that every day in case there's something different to tell. It also becomes a challenge to, all right, you've seen this 5 different times already this year. Now, do it again and make it look different. And this is a different look at that, in that we're actually photographing the reason why they call the yellow pots and butt pots. It's not just to see them run. They're having a briefing in the morning, delivering some guidance for the day, addressing any concerns from the previous week or from the morning. So it is an actual meeting, and from there they will set out into the woods and have a look at what the woods are going to be for the day. They're told where they're going to be cutting during the day that day. So it is a purposeful meeting, and I think we got a little bit more purpose out of it this time. So mission accomplished. Same thing we've seen a lot before, but we did, I think, make it look a little different. We didn't make it do anything. By the way, let me be correct. We didn't make it different. We caught how it was different, or we caught something different this time that we hadn't caught before. So I'm happy to see that. Now, here's Schumacher coming back from their meeting, with the rest of the crew leadership. So Schumacher's coming back out of the woods. He's walking through a field that has some pretty deep holes in it. This field sucks to walk through. It is the worst, and I've darn near broken my ankle a few times walking through this field. Also, the hogs have started having their way with the field, so it just gets worse every week. I think that the hogs are becoming more and more of a problem as the woods shrink. That's just my guess as to what's going on, but the hogs really have been tearing up that field. So here's FHK waiting their turn to be dismissed into the woods. Again, the sun in the background. Um, couldn't be happier with the light this year. I know I've said that a few times, but I really do appreciate the light. Here's Kruger on their way in. Kruger has got a big crew this year. Very impressive, and they are staying motivated. Uh, Here's FHK's axe box. They're carrying that into the woods. So, yeah, every crew's got their axe box, got their supplies, and everybody gets it in differently. Um, I I don't think there's. I think OC and Lechner, maybe a pelt. Uh, Schumacher has been wheeling theirs in, and FHK uses the axe handles. Um, there are three. I think a pelt does it, and Hart carries the axe box in as if it were a coffin. I know there've on pretty much every occasion that I have been hosting somebody out in the woods for the first time, be it for stories or just as guests or curious parties or whatever it is, um, they do. One of the first things they remark on is, it looks like they're carrying a casket. And it's true. It is exactly what it looks like. I like these shots, this perspective. They have this casket. It does not look enjoyable to carry. And they have all of this ahead of them. And you still can't tell when it ends. Now, fortunately, on this day, it actually wasn't that far away. But it's not like it wound off around the corner or anything. But it still is a fun angle nonetheless. This one isn't as great an angle. I wanted to get the black pot in this shot. Black pot, of course, for the black helmet. Hart has two black pots, I think. That's another line, not exactly. And then I'm totally going to screw this up, and I'm sure that somebody from Hart is going to tell me how badly I screwed this up. But it's like a crew chief. I don't think it's technically a crew chief, but it's like a crew chief. The Hart Black Pot. Send your complaints and nasty emails to somebody else at gmail.com. I think we're going to go with this one. The light, sun's coming up. The day has just started, and they've only just started walking down that long path with this giant casket of a box. I set up here watching the Junior Red Pot come down that path with the intent of catching him as he came into that light. And I think, I don't know, I think I might have got it. So again, I'm going to mark this one. We'll come back and make sure that is the one. If you'll pardon me for 1 second, I'm going to check something over here. When I move away from the Photoshop, the extra screen goes away. So we're going to go back to my favorite shot from a couple weeks ago. All right. So, I think we're back. Let me check one more thing. Make sure I got that right. All right, let's get back to it. The world continues to turn, even now, and I can honestly say that this is better. So here we go. We've got some individuals here in Kruger bringing out the familiar scene, the morning scene, the getting things cleaned up, moving things to brush piles, making room. I enjoyed. I was entertained by this. I happened to be here in this woods when um, when it happened that um, one of the jerps, I believe, told the chief that his people needed to widen the tractor path. This was a brush pile that was on the left of the path. Here's the path. You see someone here with some more brush. And he wanted the path widened, was the instructions. Let me see if I've got it. And I don't have another view of it. But in any event, the path needed to be widened. And uh, they were very motivated to widen that path as instructed. And so what they did was they took as they started, they took the brush and the sticks and the small trees from the brush pile on the right side of the path, right up against the path. They picked it up and they moved it to the brush pile on the left side of the path, right against the path. So effectively what they were doing was moving the path over, as they made this path, this pile bigger, and this one smaller, and this came out this way, and the other one went back that way. So I had a good laugh, but they figured it out. Believe we are in Schumacher. And I believe she is waiting as they're getting ready to work on a tree. One of these might work. We'll see. Now we've got some uh, downswinging. We're at 8:23 a.m. And there's already a log on the ground. So there we go. Now we've got our chief, and he is doing one of those. He's starting the front wedge. Now this one was impressive, because this tree, I was focused on the work down at the bottom, but up in the top, once this wedge really got set, we quickly realized that there wasn't really much about this tree that wanted to fall in the way that they were setting the wedge. By setting the front wedge here, what you're indicating is that you intend for this tree to fall this way. It always falls to the front wedge. And so he set the front wedge, but as we were looking at it, myself and the Jerp, we kind of realized that this tree doesn't want to fall towards this front wedge. In fact, we were concerned that it might go in the exact opposite direction. And so we hung around and watched the progress of this tree, the development of the wedge there. This one looks, he's not posing. I believe somebody had just said something funny off to his right. But it sure does look like he's posing. And probably not going to use those. Again, organic is always better. I'm trying to get him getting into this wedge here with the chief in the background. However, if I ever got close to getting it, his shirt kept whipping around. Now this is somebody else swinging on it, one of the dead Schumacher chiefs. He doesn't have the shirt problem, but he is a much taller individual, and so the geometry got all off. All my angles were different. Now, Schumacher also, on average, has much better axes than anybody else. They've got some really nice axes. And this is me running around to the other side to see if I can catch some of the damage that these axes do. It doesn't take much with these axes. They are not easy to swing. They are very heavy. But they've got some really nice axes. High quality axes that they keep very, very sharp. Long been impressed with Schumacher's axes. At one point, they had for a number of years, they had at least one competition. Is it Australian, New Zealand, Tuatami? Those beautiful polished axes that take out chips as big as dinner plates. Just I don't know what I would ever do with one of those. And again, this is a big broad-faced axe as well. So I'm going to go back and review those. I know that somewhere in there is probably one, so I'm going to flag one and come back and look at the whole set there. This is, that turn has finally come up, and she's getting the swing. I do what I can, try and get the photo of the lines on the side of the pot. When you become a chief, when you inherit that position, you add the names of, you keep up with the names of everybody who has held that position before you. And so these are the names of everybody who has worn this pot. Jacob Nolan here would go on to become a red pot. Let me see who else we might have. I guess it was the other. There was Schumacher produced another red pot a couple years after Jacob, but I guess he was on another line, another one of the crew chief lines. So I like this for wearing the Schumacher blacks. Uh, I like that I can get that there's clearly some chip spray going on. That contrast there, and there again is the familiar problem this year. A few in a row there where I'm all fogged up and I have lost focus, and there's not much I can do about it until I can maybe get it back again, and I have successfully got it back, so that was nice. And I blew it again. So frustrating. God. Oh, man. That's awful. That's so awful. Yeah, so if anybody has any ideas, any suggestions how to keep your glasses from fogging up, let me know. Or, give me your best guidance on LASIK. That could help too. So anyway, returning back to this wedge and how this tree fell. This tree did not want to fall where that front wedge was. Everything about it was going in a different direction. The chief was spoken to by the junior red pot who was there, explaining the junior red pot's view of the situation, and the chief assured him that he would have it under control and he would get that tree to fall roughly in the direction that it needed to go. And sure as hell he did it. Now, it did fall a little to the right, just a little, but not a lot. So I was really impressed with how that tree turned out. Really impressed and surprised. So good for him. Here we are working on more brush out of the woods. I mean, it's one thing somebody dragging a little bit of brush, but if you see somebody dragging out half a tree, you got to stop and get that. I'm going to flag one and come back and look at all of them in that set later and make sure I got the right one. And I'm trying to catch a parade. I'm trying to see if I can get a line of people coming out. That first one might just be as close as I can get. More brush clearance pile. Because that's intense. That accurately reflects the intensity and purpose. Just 1 second later, and all you've got is the brush landing at his feet 8 inches away from where it started. So this was a very long log. There is somebody else way back there, and I was trying to get a shot that indicated or hinted at the length without having so much space as to be boring. This would be considered a very, very large high port. The high ports being the logs that can be carried by 2 people. In fact, some purists would say that this is not a high port. It's too long. I have not received ever or heard any official definition of length, so I'm just going to go with calling that a high port. I'm not aware of any upwards or lower bounds. Now, we're going to finish with this one. We're going to finish for today, having done um, half of the second half of one day, the first half of another. Having made some really great progress tonight. We're going to finish on this tree. I went to these woods. This was a tree. This is FHK Woods. This was a tree that was right on the edge of potentially being a first tier log. And I mean, straight up for days. Beautiful, tall, straight tree. Its first branch looked to be at least 30 feet up. So this had all the makings of a first tier log, and I knew everybody wanted this to be a first tier log, whether they knew it yet or not. They wanted this to be a first tier log. So I suggested to the chief that a high wedge could threaten the first tier log, making it just 1 or 2 feet short of being a first tier log, because it was right on the line. So I said, set you a low wedge. And he said, absolutely, yes, we can do that. And I turned my back for a second, and when I turned back around, he was setting the wedge here, which is very, very low. So that did motivate me, but that did also invest me in hanging around for a little bit. I wanted to see this. I wanted to capture this swinging on a wedge at this height. But I did also feel a sense of responsibility for having said what I said, resulting in a wedge this high. In fact, I took that responsibility so seriously that I did even hang around and swing on that tree some. Here I took a little bit more. The cutting of that low wedge tree is off way over here to the right. I kind of took a little walk over here, still in the FHK woods. Caught the FHK chief and Junior Redpot talking. Caught this moment. They were gesturing up to the trees and talking and gesturing and talking. And I missed it a couple times, and I just kept waiting for them to do it again. They did eventually do it again, and I got that. Here's me. Now I'm zoomed in on this, so I'm not. This is a fall path. See, there's the front wedge. The tree will be coming this way. I am in front of the wedge, but I am zoomed in here pretty well, so I'm not in the fall path of this tree, but I am trying to get it from front on. I think one of those first shots is actually going to do it for this. Those are going to be the ones that we go with. So I'm back at that tree. That is such a low wedge. Very very, very motivational. But a low wedge. The Junior Red Pot even got in on it. And right across from this tree they were working on another tree, so I did get this one too, and uh, I got really lucky in that I could just turn around, and there was one of these naturally framed situations with the tree and the vines looking through, and and the natural elements there actually framing the shot. So now let's go back to that super low wedge. And it did fall. It finally went. And of course, when it went, it got hung. Oh, and here was the other thing. This tree was so tall, so straight, so well balanced. It stuck out above the other trees. And it was starting to teeter. And it was getting that where it is shaking every axe blow. You can see it shake the leaves. This is a tree that is about ready to go. And it was such a well balanced tree, so perfectly balanced. Um, and it looked for a second like it was going to fall on its front wedge, the way it's supposed to. And right then, a strong gust of wind, you could see it up in the canopy, uh, blowing through all of the trees. And this tree standing out above the other trees around it caught the wind, full sail caught the wind, and pushed it directly back on its back wedge. So this tree that they worked so hard to cut and get every possible inch out of, well, it went on its back wedge, went the other direction. Um, but as we talked about, for a tree this tall and this straight, worth it. I think we all agreed. If you got a back wedge a tree, this was one that was worthwhile to back wedge on. So while they're both working to free up. All of them are working to free up that tree. I turned back around again to continue to get FHK working on their tree. Again, naturally framed with the Yopon and oak here, Yopon here, the brush and everything, uh, framing that shot. I'm going to mark one of these. One of these in here does it. I will come back and look later. One of those from that set is going to be it. And yeah, so what we'll do now is we've got about right around half the day left. We are now on the 19th of September. We have uh, a full day and half of this day, a full day, and then half of another day, and we will be all caught up on all of the photos. I will do everything I can to have that done by the end of the week, so that going into this weekend we are fully caught up on photos. It's been a couple weeks, I think, since the last photos were posted, and so when we go through here and we cull this process, this is what I do for every week that I shoot photos. Every session we sit down, and so this is an experiment in recording that, so that you can everybody can watch as I do what I'm going to do anyway, which is look through these, and stories come up in my head while I'm looking at them. But this is about how long it takes reviewing all these photos, and then what's going to happen is same as usual. I always review the photos. I sleep on it. The next day, I go look at the photos that I picked, and I double check that they are the right photos with a fresh set of eyes. I make any corrections that I might have to make, um, and then they get published, and we move on to the next set. So there's going to still be a little bit more work yet before these photos get published, but you've gotten a first peek at them. Um, we will repeat the process again with more photos, hopefully tomorrow evening, and then tomorrow's Wednesday, and then Thursday we'll try to get through as many as we got through tonight, and that might put us so that on Friday we've got everything published. In any event, thank you for joining the stream. Thank you for supporting Bonfire and staying motivated. Thank you for joining me on this bipartisan experience tonight. Well, there's so much that is not bipartisan happening tonight. I think it's still happening. I don't know. Maybe it's over, hopefully. Um, so stay tuned again. Like, follow, subscribe. That's the word, right? Subscribe to the stream um, for notifications of when our next live stream is going to be. Share the channel with your buddies, with your family. If you've seen yourself in these photos, share it with your family. Make sure everybody sees it too. Look out for the website, Dion, Dion